Hey, this is Issa Nakazawa, your host for Transmission Studio, a show featuring the independent artists and community-based organizations that make San Francisco's arts and culture scene what it is today. And today on this episode, I'm super excited to be in conversation with Ron Sundstrom, a professor of philosophy and the humanities advisor for SF Urban Film Fest. Stay tuned. Hi, Ron. Welcome to Transmission Studio. It's such a joy to have you on today.
Well, thank you. It's really amazing to be here.
Yeah, so we just spoke with Faye from SF Urban Film Festival, and so I thought we could just start with how you got in touch with SFUF's work, and if you could tell us specifically what your role is.
Yeah, well, it started back in 2016, actually. It was a while ago, so I've been around for a while with Faye and the SFUF team. It started because I saw an ad for the film festival. That was cool. That was very cool. Something was going down at Spur, and I was beginning my work. Well, I was in an early stage of my work for my new book, Just Shelter, I was looking to make a conference that I was hosting at the University of San Francisco a little more interesting than boring old philosophy conferences. So I invited Faye to give a presentation about the organization on the stuff they do. And she said, got you one better. How about you invite your, philosophy crew to come to Spur and see a screening and be part of the event. So I was like, I'm down, let's do this. No. So I invited a bunch of really old, scraggly philosophers. They're not that bad, but some really are. They're young and they're old. Really are. They really are. The whole Gandalf, but with a really ratty sport coat.
Yeah.
And there's that. But then there's young people and there's really cool people. And they generally tend to be into urban issues, because this was for a conference called the Philosophy of the City Conference. So I brought them down to Spur. It was my first time I'm engaging with Spur at all. And great event. It was a great event. I don't recall exactly what the theme was, but probably on affordable housing, because that's Faye's jam. And so we were doing that. And then after, Faye's like, hey, let's have coffee. And so we met at one of Faye's favorite places to meet. Pro tip, Faye loves meeting folks in hotel lobbies. I don't know why.
That's pretty G. I like that.
It's the reason is because, it's an open space, there's seating, and you can get coffee or tea or whatever, right? So she did that for a while. I don't know if she's still doing
Revealing the secrets.
Yeah, revealing the secrets.
I like
That's a pro tip. That's a Faye
That's a
pro tip there. And so we met and she invited me on. And I'm like, you know what? I'd like to step out of the ivory tower, get away from the university, the classroom, and from just a bunch of philosophy folks, right? Political science folks or sociology folks, academic folks generally who care about urban issues, and actually talk about people who know something about policy, who know something about policy and who know something about actual city life and the issues on the streets. So by meeting Faye, I was introduced to the Spur community, and I was introduced to other folks who are in Faye's circuit, right? So I got to talk to activists, I got to talk to urban designers and architects and artists, and it was a really great expansion of my world, of my work, and most importantly of my friendship circle, because these people mean a lot to me.
Oh, that's a beautiful answer. And I think it's such an important and generative bridge when we go outside of our kind of important spaces, but also try and figure out what the application can be.
Yes.
Because in a lot of other countries, philosophy and scholarship don't exist in a tower. They're actually, academics sit on important governing bodies to make informed decisions about the cities we live in.
Yeah.
So I love that. And can you just back up and tell us what that lived experience or what that intellectual spark and curiosity was for you around the philosophy of the city? What's the connection for you around what compels you to that?
Right. Well, I've always cared a lot about justice, right? And of course, social justice. I've cared a lot ever since I was a child. And there's a backstory with that, right? It starts in the Philippines. But
tell us. Take us.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
I want to know the initial early seed.
Okay, but all right. But I want to get back to philosophy. Okay. So I grew up, I'm a Navy brat. I'm also a vet, an Army vet. And so I know I look like 20, but really I'm older than that. So, and then I was.
Don't blow our cover. We're
okay,
both
don't
21.
blow my cover, right? Don't blow my. So, and then I was, one of the places I spent time as a child was Subic Bay Navy Base in the Philippines. And so raised on the base, and my my Filipino mother was like getting me all ready to be a good American boy. And so she would pack these American style lunches, which I absolutely hated, right? So Wonder Bread, bologna sandwiches, cheese, mayo. In the Philippines, mayo, like in a hot, that's not going to roll. An apple and some Oreos, right?
Wow.
So I was a little pig. Anyways, so there was a school trip, and we went off base to do something. And we stopped as a school trip to like Baskin Robbins, which is a big thing in the 70s. I know the kids have no idea what I'm talking about, but it wasn't just this little thing. It was like the only thing, the only game in town for loads of people for ice cream wise. So anyways, I was psyched about it, and I had a little bit of allowance. So what I did was I ate the part of my lunch that I like, the Oreos, had my ice cream, and then threw away the rest.
Right.
But I threw it away outside in a trash bin, and this Filipino kid, comes up, and he's in these tattered shorts, no shirt. He's my age, my height, my skin color, my hair texture. It's like a doppelganger of me, a doppelganger. And he picked that bag right out of that trash, and he walked away with it. And I was sitting there, and I don't know how old I was.
Yeah.
I don't remember how old I was. I was probably a tween. So it was a shock to me. One that, I knew the facts. I had lived in the Philippines. I was, born at the base. I knew all that stuff.
Yeah.
But it was in my face, and then I was all of a sudden, right, immediately at that moment implicated in it. So that kid has always been my moral doppelganger, and I've been chasing him for most of my life.
That's really
and through
profound.
my work.
Thank you for sharing that.
Isn't that intense? That's kind of weird. I got other stories.
I don't think that's intense. I think that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And I always like asking about that initial opening and reckoning because that does carry with us.
It does. It's the backstory about why I think we should give a damn.
And I think that often there's an assumption that one's interest in intellectual pursuits or things that get kind of categorized as that act as if there isn't a lived, visceral connection.
There was a lived experience. There was very much so. There was an immediate experience with another human being who's a complete stranger to me, but whose moral life, whose existence was connected to me morally and politically at that moment in ways that stayed with me for my entire life. Still to this day, I'm still talking about it.
Yeah. As it should.
As I should. So that haunts me. And so, but I enjoy my work. I enjoy teaching. I enjoy writing about the things I do and the things I care about. Very abstract issues inside philosophy, like what's the meaning of a social category. I've done a lot of work on what's the meaning of racism. What does it mean to be mixed race? I'm obviously mixed, right? I'm obviously a mixed child, right? So I've spent a lot of time thinking about these really abstract things. What's the meaning of justice? And I turned to urban issues because, first of all, it's in your face, like that kid was in the Bay Area, right? There's a housing shortage here. It is in your face. If you don't know it, you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
It's just right there, right? So there's an egregious example of a deep, right, and enduring injustice in the Bay Area that's part of the American story that stretches back, right, to our founding. It stretches back, if the founding's too far back, to the 1940s, in the way that we partitioned homes and financing for homes and gave people opportunity to buy what and where.
Yes.
And so I care a lot about that, and so I decided to write about that, to step away from the abstract stuff and do something that in my discipline is called public philosophy. So I have spent, I've been thinking about these issues for over now 20 years, thinking in particular about the problem of segregation, the demands of integration and fairness.
And I think something that I like really is meaningful to me about your work and to the work of these bigger questions is that there's a materiality to them. And me and Faye were talking about how when we're not having as community across discipline and identity questions about I think oftentimes assumed shared definitions, which aren't actually shared.
Yes.
And so I think when our philosophical underpinnings are obscured or kind of like they're corralled in these like, specific rooms, we as organizers and artists lose out.
Yes.
Because if we're not addressing the big questions that seem obvious,
right,
and yet if they were dealt with,
right,
then wouldn't we be in a different place if we all had this is an interesting story. Like I remember at my old job, we all were poets and organizers. And then we had this one workshop where a facilitator asked us a simple question is, what is your definition of racism? We'd all been comrades and friends for over a decade.
Yeah.
And we'd never asked each other how we define racism.
Interesting.
And so that day, half the room said racism is bias. The other half said power plus privilege.
Sure.
So we had never had that conversation. And suddenly the room is at each other's throat.
Of course.
It's thick with anger and resentment and confusion because we feel betrayed.
Yes.
How does my best friend think that racism is just prejudice?
Sure.
So can you speak to that? Like, what have you observed around like the kind of lack of philosophical conversations in some of the more practical spaces and what the implications are for that?
No, absolutely. I mean, that's a really good topic there. What's the meaning of racism? What's the meaning of race? What's the meaning of these categories? And I've spent a lot of time thinking about them and put a lot of ink to paper, on those things. But, I love your story because it shows that there is what philosophers like to call conceptual confusion about these terms, right? And then often the way that we define these terms are embedded in a particular framework that we've adopted and a value system. And so it becomes, it's very jarring when someone else comes with a different definition and often embedded in their own framework and their own moral system. And we're talking past each other, we're all of a sudden angry with each other, and really we're allies, or we could be if we just stopped for a moment and just listen to each other and do some explanation, right? Wow. And some storytelling. We need to talk story about where we're at and what these ideas are. Now, I could give you, if you had the time, right, a lecture on 5 different definitions of racism, but I'm not going to.
Okay.
Read my work, right? So,
yes.
But there's that. But we're actually really good on that one. On that score, there's a lot of good philosophy on what is racism that picks up on both of those definitions, which I won't shut down right now here and there. But one thing that's helpful that philosophy does is it says, well, what are we talking about? And it comes with some core definition. At minimum, what are we talking about when we come up with a term like racism? What are we talking about? And then how are the different ways we spin off of that and then define the term? And why do we do that way, right? And then in what ways will the desire to hammer down a single definition always frustrate you, right? The kids are creative. You make a version of racism today, right? And you define it to like 5 o'clock tonight, right? 5 o'clock this afternoon at Mission High. They're going to have a whole new one going. And you're going to be like, what happened? What happened? Right? I mean, we see this all the time, right?
Yeah.
With different concepts like gender, with sex, with race, with mixed race. We see it all the time.
Yeah.
And so I think philosophy is a way of it can help answer these questions for us.
Right.
And I have books to recommend and articles. Of course I do. But I also think that it's also really important to understand the nature of the confusion and why there is confusion. And so, like in my book, I struggle with definitions and competing definitions of gentrification and what's the evidence for these things and what's not the evidence for these things. What do the activists mean? What do the sociologists who are studying or the geographers who are studying it mean, right? And I try to provide a minimum definition. And then the same with segregation and integration, because we disagree about the meaning of these terms. Segregation is really, we all think it's bad, right? Yeah. We all think segregation is bad. Don't segregate. It's horrible, right?
Well, some people don't think it's bad.
They don't. Well, they don't think it's bad because they think of it as group clustering.
Yes. And
or separation, right, and or enclaving, And so I'm like, all right, so then you don't mean by segregation, right, de jure, by law, right, enforced involuntary separation of the groups into different little pockets. What you mean are things like affinity clusters folks wanting to live around each other, right?
Yeah.
There being, a Vietnamese neighborhood because all the Vietnamese folks decided to move, right?
Yeah.
Decided to settle there, or because of historical reasons, that's the only place they were allowed to settle.
Yeah.
And then they built a community around it.
And I think almost of like the philosophical argument,
Yes.
I'm thinking of Malcolm saying, why do I want to integrate into a burning house?
Sure.
Which to me is like, and I was just listening to one of my favorite comedians,
Sure.
Affion Crockett, talk about, I don't want to be the black version of the white architecture.
Sure. Absolutely. No, that's a pithy quote. That's God, okay, you're gonna have to help me because I'm an old man, and I'm not.
I'm pretty old too. We got these Asian genes helping us, but
Jazz Simone, what's her last name? Nina Simone. There you go, Nina Simone. Not her last name. Nina Simone. One of my favorite quotes from her is, look, it's not just that I want to. I don't want to. What I want is not to live next to you. I just want my equality.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
Yeah, don't sentimentalize it.
Don't sentimentalize it. Now, if I want to live next to you, then that's my bag, then too bad for you because the law should protect me.
Right.
But if I don't want to, then I don't want to. And neither do you have to live next to me, but there should be no legal barriers preventing me or you from living next to each other as long as we have the opportunity to do so. Right.
Yeah, and I think in that way, it's like sometimes there is like I think often in the U.S. context, I'm just speaking to that because that's what I experienced.
Yeah.
There is a projection because of unresolved hurt and pain.
Right.
That's the blood, literal, or just the like specter of haunting in the U.S. I feel like it often is defining our impasses, but but it's not named. So it's like, I'm hearing you hate me when you're just saying I've been hurt.
That's right.
I want to live next to you, but that feels irresponsible.
It could it feels irresponsible or scary, right?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
There isn't actually, I think, I'm in favor, just to, because this is being recorded.
Yeah.
To let everyone know, I'm in favor of integration, all right? I'm in favor. If you want to live up in Chinatown, go for it if you can find a place. Yeah. And if you want to live in Noe Valley, well, if you can afford it, go for it, right? Go for it. Yeah, absolutely.
Tell us your secret.
I live in North Oakland. I love it, right? I love North Oakland. And so I do think, though, that we have an opportunity issue. So, some folks do want a cluster. Some people do want an enclave. But there's too many people keeping other people out.
Exactly.
And I think, and I'm kind of cold on this. I'm like, I think every neighborhood in every locale, in every city, and I'm talking about you, Orinda, and or Ross, or in fancy Marin County, or any fancy place, because North Oakland has plenty of affordable housing. Wow. West Berkeley has plenty of affordable housing, right?
Right.
There is not plenty, but there is affordable housing there.
Right.
And you can see the developments there. They're there, right? There's like a mixture of different kinds of folks, different ancestries, genealogies, and ethnic groups are all there. They're all there, right? And also the classes, they're all there. But I do think that neighborhoods like Rockridge and Elmwood, I'm just saying stuff, right? I'm saying dangerous.
I'm just
right?
saying things.
Have worked, right, to keep people out, and then current policies and institutions, and of course there's the market, will help to keep that exclusion going in the long term.
Yeah.
We choose right, our urban policy. And we should choose an urban policy that gives opportunity for middle class, working class, and the very poor to be able to afford to live in the cities where they often work as part of the service industry, or even in regular jobs like school teacher and fire and fire person and a firefighter or a police officer. Folks should live in the neighborhood.
Absolutely. And that would dramatically change dynamics.
That's right.
And relations.
So it's kind of, I'm gonna get all unpopular with the Berkeley crowd, that I'm like, cast a shadow on
you need to.
on North Berkeley. Cast a shadow at the North Berkeley BART station and build housing for people.
That's our moral responsibility.
It is.
And I do feel like in this country, at least, and I know it's a generalization, but I do feel like there's some clumsiness around talking directly about class.
Sure.
And I think of like really wealthy zip codes where technically their children are attending public schools.
Right.
It's like, we can talk about how public and private are obscuring a lot of the dynamics where it's like, but people are sneaking in their children go this zip code because they know the schools are exponentially better.
That's exactly it. So often, right? Yeah, exactly. Our housing, right, connects with our educational policy. And so not only do we get, right, class and race-based housing segregation, and it's not the kind of clustering that I'm okay with.
No.
And then that results in educational segregation. It results in, right, opportunity hoarding.
Great term.
It's not mine. It's a sociologist.
Okay. I'm all, wow.
It's opportunity hoarding.
I'm like, conceptual confusion,
right,
opportunity
exactly.
hoarding.
Why should San and Samo have all that opportunity? Let some folks out of, right, Marin City and San Rafael up into San and Samo to get some of that great opportunity.
Yeah.
And that means San and Samo has an obligation, I think a moral obligation, and we should make it a political and legal obligation to build more affordable homes for people across the income scale in such fancy neighborhoods and cities.
I love that.
That's
I love the
that's
clarity of that.
Just shelter, right?
I know. Talk to us about Just Shelter, gentrification, integration, race, and reconstruction. Beautiful title.
I know. That's a fantastic cover.
Give us your spiel, Ron.
Well, it's a cover of Oakland. That's the cover of downtown Oakland. There, it's a nice picture there. And Just Shelter, it means that. It's both an imperative, right? It's both an imperative, just shelter, and also a noun, right? We should have, right, shelter that is just. We should have housing and policy that is just. And we should allow open opportunity, substantive opportunity for as many people as possible to live and work in our areas. I don't think I want to live in New York. That doesn't mean I should have a right to live in New York City, right? But I mean, if I have a good reason to live in New York City, like, that's where my family's at, or that's where my job is at, I should be able to afford a house there.
Absolutely.
Or rent an apartment there, right? There should be some, and we can adjust. We can, right? We can build more public housing. We can build more private housing. We can pressure neighborhoods and cities to allow for, right, more what philosophers called, here's another phrase, distributive justice, right? The distribution of the benefits, the benefits and the burdens of society, right? North Oakland suffers not just, they don't have enough of the benefits, but they share a disproportionate number of the burdens, right, of our urban policy. And so many places do. So you do that, you help to solve the gentrification problem, right? Because it's not just the Starbucks or the bike lane moving in. I don't like Starbucks, but I love them bike lanes.
Yeah, me too.
But it's not that. It's actually just the ability for people to stay in place if they want to, and the ability to move in so that they can, right, live their lives and follow their life plans in the cities and where they provide services and they work.
Yeah.
Right. And this is my vision of integration and what I think American Reconstruction. We were just talking about W.E.B. Du Bois before the recording.
Yes, we were.
Right. And his book, Black Reconstruction, hovers above my idea about American Reconstruction. We need to finish the unfinished, right, project of American Reconstruction.
Absolutely.
Part of it
really
is to
powerful.
open up opportunity for all Americans.
How would you myth bust? Because I'm not gonna lie, like I have a hard time sometimes because I get so emotional, and that not that I think emotion's important, but I think that sometimes I admittedly get really shut down with my own anger, and sometimes I come across people who I love, but they still have ingrained this idea that not everyone who's alive deserves dignified housing, and they wouldn't say that outright, but they're the types of people who say, like, how are you working for your keep? And I think there's all these kind of philosophical internalizations of like how we're undeserving. There's not a lot of social infrastructure in the U.S. So we kind of, if you're born and raised here, you're growing up with this, you're raised in this kind of like dog eat dog mentality of I have to earn anything that I receive, and I'm competing with you.
Right.
So I think that has really led to people, if I'm being real, like even people who pretend they're progressive, inside their head, they're walking past people and they're like, I'm angry you're on the street. Sure. You're making me unsafe. You're scaring my child. You're scaring me. Right. And so I'm seeing in the Bay Area, there is a real swing to conservatism because the fear and anxiety that to me is everywhere. It's in the fabric of the U.S.
Right.
I think that informs how we vote more than our Instagram caption.
Right. Well, in your example raises a bunch of thorny issues, but I want to go to the heart of it. I want to go to the heart of it, and that is right. Remembering that a really deep value that a lot of us, left and right, progressive and conservative, share, and that is the fundamental value of moral equality. Right? I am not willing to give up on that. Yeah. I think you and I are moral equals. Yeah. I think you and I and the person on the street are moral equals. Now, we're not economic equals, definitely not, but we're moral equals. And we should be given equal treatment and due equal consideration. Mm-hmm. And you start with that building block, that cornerstone of an argument for justice in social spatial arrangements, or spatial justice. If you and I are both morally equals, then we should all have equal and fair opportunity to provide for our lives, and that means a decent health care, right? That means a decent education, because without education, I'm not getting opportunity. Decent, right, and a decent place to live, because we all need a place to go pee. Yeah. That's fundamental. We all need a place to go to the bathroom. Yeah. We all need a place to lay our heads, right? So I'm not asking for a McMansion for everybody.
Right, yeah.
I'm just asking for a place where some folks, right, can go and lay their heads down and go to the bathroom with some damn dignity.
Yeah.
That's all, right? Do folks have to be intense? No. And there's a more complex and an hour-long conversation to discuss that, right? But we can start and get pretty far with the idea those folks on the street are our moral equals, and that, right, that woman working at taqueria is my moral equal, and we should be able to live here in the city we serve and work in, and we love and live in, with moral equality.
Thank you, Ron. I love that. And I know we're coming to a close, but I'm curious. I don't want to put you on the spot because you don't owe anyone an answer, but like, what do you think are helpful ways for people to listen better and to stay open and curious when they are feeling that kind of sense of, being heightened or starting to close down, because that they're expected to kind of reinforce what they think?
Yeah. How about just, this has come with age for me. I just said I look 20, but I was joking, obviously. But it just comes with age. For me, it's come with age. Getting out of myself, being less arrogant, and saying, there's a person there. I'm encountering a person right now. And in that encounter, there's something valuable there in every moment. And I'm going to sit back and I'm going to pay attention, put my phone down, and listen and try to connect. Because I think there's a healthy and an amazing potential to get to know each other and to know ourselves in a deeper fashion. I think it's that. Slowing down and just listening. That doesn't mean I have to agree.
Right.
But just to listen and be open to learning.
Yeah. Thank you. That's so beautiful. That's very inspiring. And I do think that for me, like, I define or I measure if I'm listening where like I am open to being changed. Yeah. It doesn't mean that I owe you a changed opinion, but that I'm not trying to just conquer you with my own beliefs.
Conquer. Amen. Amen.
Thank you so much, Ron. How can we get this book? Where can we get it?
Well, you can get it. It's published by Oxford University Press, so the Oxford University Press website, or Amazon. They're very convenient.
Yeah, there we go.
Convenient. And I haven't bothered the local bookstores to stock it yet, but maybe a few have it. But I check with the OUP website, and if you have to, Amazon.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Ron, and thank you for all the work that you're contributing. Are we going to see you at SF Urban Film Festival?
Absolutely. I'm a member of the team, and I love it.
Okay. Well, we'll see you there. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for watching Transmission Studio, and stay tuned for our next episode.